The Green Bay Packers defense suffocated, knocked down, and battered CJ Stroud. At the end, Jordan Love and new kicker Brandon McManus did the rest in a signature win for this 2024 season. The Packers get a 24-22 dub. We're live on YouTube.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. It is a Victory Monday, a little bit early if you're watching on YouTube. And we are brought to you today by Hillsdale College. Go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. The story of this game is the Green Bay Packers defense. I understand Jordan Love, and we'll get to the Brandon McManus of it all. They win. You know that. This is a story about defense. The first completion for a conversion on third down was late in the fourth quarter. Now, it was the third down conversion, but it was their first of the game, the Houston Texans. The Packers had absolutely beguiled, just bewildered and battered and bruised CJ Stroud. He finishes this game 10 of 21 for 86 yards. The Houston Texans offense held to 3.4 yards per play. 4 of 13 on third down, under 200 total yards of offense. If not for 3 turnovers, this is an ass kicking. That's what it is. 16 points came off Packers turnovers. 2 touchdowns and a field goal came off the Jordan Love pair of interceptions, and then a gobsmacking turnover with a punt, which looked for a while like it might be the punt. But when you go back and you watch, and I'm going to do this on NFL Pro, and I will probably write about it for The Leap this week, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. On third down, Jeff Hafley just said, we are going to show 6+ man pressure every time. Every time. And sometimes we're going to bring it, and sometimes we're not. And sometimes it's only going to be a 4-man pressure. Xavier McKinney on the second drive gets a 4-man pressure sack where he comes clean off the edge. There had to have been 4 or 5 times on third down where the Packers scheme up a free rusher on third down. And it's not just miscommunication. It's, we don't know. We don't know how we're going to sort this out. And you're playing tricks on the protections. Okay, we're going to full slide here when really they're only sending 2 guys from that side and you have the extra coming off the backside. Jeff Hafley was brilliant in this football game. He was spectacular in this football game. And I understand the run game got gashed a little bit, but it seems worse than it is. 32 carries for $142 in this game. Joe Mixon, for a couple chunk runs in this game, only averaged 4.6 yards per carry. He actually averaged more yards per carry than CJ Stroud averaged per attempt. If you do that every game, you're going to win against any team, not just a quarterback that, by the way, I have been on the record as saying I think is overrated. And I understand he was under a lot of duress today, but even in those moments when he wasn't, or even in the moments when he was, they came in talking about, oh, this quarterback, CJ Stroud against the blitz, he's the best, he's the greatest, he can make all these throws. Okay, but where are the early down completions? Can't live like this. And then, sure enough, on third down, you heat him up every time. And this is going to be the blueprint moving forward. You love a game where you come out of it going, this is the blueprint. Now, the Vikings started it. And if not for two bewildering interceptions from Jordan Love, this game would have looked somewhat like that Texans-Vikings game where the Vikings just got their doors blown off. The Packers dominated this football game play to play, down to down. 3.4 yards per play, 55 net passing yards for the Houston Texans. You should win a game like that going away. You outgain the Texans by 80 plus yards. You out first down the Texans. Like, this is a game that you should have really dominated on the scoreboard as much as you did on the field. But this is look, I don't think this is a special offense, but CJ Stroud is a very good quarterback. Can you remember the last performance the Packers have had? For whatever misgivings that I have about the CJ Stroud elite talk, and for whatever misgivings I have about Bobby Slowick, offensive boy genius coordinator, can you think of another game where the Packers defense held a quarterback held in as high regard as CJ Stroud under 100 yards? Can you think of one? Ironically, I feel like the last time they did this to an elite quarterback was Tony Romo in 2009, when Charles Woodson had one of the all-time great defensive performances that I have ever seen. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about an all-time defensive performance. Every third down, they looked overwhelmed. And even on the play that they made at the end, CJ makes an incredible play, but it still required an incredible catch. The Packers got pressure. Like, the Packers still won the early part of that play. They still created an adversity situation that you have to, if you're CJ Stroud, you just have to go make a play. And he did. And good for him. For the Packers to overcome a 3-turnover game from your offense and special teams, it takes a special defensive performance. And look, everydayers or just two-in-a-rowers, because we were just on this show on Friday going, I mean, the title of the episode was will the real Jeff Hafley please stand up? And Jeff Hafley told us on Friday, we are still in the infancy of this defense. And then they come out, they lose Quay Walker in the first quarter. It looks like they're going to get run off the field. They make some tweaks, they make some changes, and instead they give up just 3 points in the second half, and they go out and win. Over the last 5 games, including this one, over the last 5 games, the Packers defense has given up 22 total points in the second halves of those games. And we're talking about the Rams. The Cardinals are a top 10 offense. We're talking about the Vikings, who are a top 10 offense. And we're talking about the Texans, who are not a top 10 offense, but it's a top 10 quarterback. Even if I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback, and I don't, he's a top 5 quarterback. And for the Packers to get a defensive performance like this in a game where you get a little bit of an uneven Jordan Love performance, it says something about how good Jordan Love was on every rep except the 2 terrible interceptions, that for most of this game, he still had a passer rating over 100. And he still goes down and leads the game-winning drive. It's all made possible by the fact that the defense played like this. And for the Green Bay Packers, you're going to play better than this offensively. You're going to get a better offensive performance, and you're not going to be going up against the Texans in the NFC, because unless it's the Super Bowl, you're just not going to see them. There isn't a defense outside of the Vikings, really, that can do this to you. The offense is going to play better, and they ran the ball extremely well. I want to talk about the offense at the end. But when you are able to play defense at this level, Like, I don't think the Lions can get to this level of defense. I don't know that the 49ers can get to this level of defense, this version of the 49ers. No one in the AFC East can. No one in the NFC South can defensively. I don't think anyone in the NFC West can. And maybe the Bears can, maybe. Maybe the Vikings can. That's it. To see a defensive performance like this stamps the Packers as a bona fide Super Bowl contender. And guess what? Guess what? Now they have a kicker. We're going to talk about Brandon McManus, the game winner, next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. BetterHelp is here to bring you closer to understanding your fears. It's spooky season. It's Halloween. What scares you? What scares you? We don't have to run away from it. We can embrace it and meet it head on. Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. If you're looking to start therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours, unless it's Locked On Packers. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? How about history? How about economics? How about great works of literature, the U.S. Constitution? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including things like the Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, and a brand new documentary-style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever you want and tune in whenever. Plus, you go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Right now, go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Were you worried? Were you worried? Be honest. Just like think about how you felt 30 seconds before the kick went up. Tell me how you felt. Were you confident he would kick it? Tell me how you felt when they tried to ice Brandon McManus and he just drilled it right down the center. Just right down the center. He got a chance. Did you know the next one was going in? This is a guy who, if you look at 40-yard field goals, so from 50 and in with extra points, he is a 90% career kicker. 90%. It's just a different beast. And we have handled the accusations, the civil lawsuits. We've talked about it on the show. I've written about it. I've talked about it on Twitter. So now is not the time to, I think, relitigate those things. If you feel a type of way about this because of those allegations, I understand where you're coming from. But right for the moment, okay, I want to focus on the football part of this because I feel like we've covered the other part, but it's important to say for those of you just parachuting in, I know a lot of you come in post-game and go, you're not an everydayer. I understand that. But this is something we have talked about. Go back and listen to the episode we did about it. I opened the show talking about it last week. So that is not fully dealt with off the field, but Brian Gutekunst did say, and it's important that I note, I think, for our purposes, that Brian Gutekunst said he did all the things I had asked that they had done. I wanted to know that they had gone through all the processes. I wanted to know that they looked into what the NFL did and went through their investigation. They did their own investigation, and then they felt like they were going to hold him to a high standard based on the allegations of sexual misconduct on the airplane when he was a Jaguar. And they felt like he's met that burden. So However you feel about that is how you feel about that. The Packers have said they feel good about it. So that's where we are right now. He just made the biggest kick of their season. He just made the biggest kick by a Packers kicker in a long time. You don't have to necessarily hold those two things as antithetical to one another. You can understand and compartmentalize these things. They didn't make it easy, is kind of the point of this. I don't want to hand wave the ugly part because the good part was the good. That's just how I feel about it. But this, for the Packers in this moment, to feel like it is solved, or at least mostly as solved as these things can be. Like, he's not going to be Justin Tucker, and that's okay. But to come in after months of layoff, and I'm not going to use the off-field part as an adversity thing. I think that's gross. But months of a layoff, to come in cold and make this kick with the game on the line, with a huge game in the season of the Green Bay Packers, to say, look, we are legit and we have fixed this kicker thing. It is a huge thing for the confidence of this football team to go in and say, yes, we know. Hey, look, the Lions beat the Vikings. That puts the Packers one step closer. They've got 2 games with the Lions left. Minnesota losing in the division is good for Green Bay. So now you look at this and you go, okay, now the kicker spot is dealt with. There are still some special teams questions, of course, because why wouldn't there be? Because that's just the way that this goes with the Packers. That's just the way that this goes with this special teams group. That's just the way that this goes with Rich Bisaccia. They have to be more disciplined on special teams. A bad return. So let's just go back to the A block point. The Texans scored 22 points in this football game, 16 off turnovers, 3 off a special teams return. One of them, you get the return into it's like the minus 45. You drive on a short field and you get a field goal. Like, the only way this game was close is because the special teams made a bunch of mistakes, and so did Jordan Love, made two big ones. You get bailed out because your defense played awesome and because your kicker you believe in. Once they got to the 40, I was like, that's a 58-yarder. Brandon McManus can make that. I never would have said that about Braden Arvison. I never would have said that about Anders Carlson. But we know Brandon McManus can do that because we've seen him do it. And that is vital in the confidence of your football team. For him to make this first kick, really, of consequence. And he drills it. Like 3 extra points. That was all he had to kick. And he's a 90+% extra point kicker, so you don't really worry about that. And he just calmly drilled. Now, the first one was dead center. The second one, he snuck that in there. He definitely snuck that in there. But it changes the confidence that your football team has, that from anywhere on the field. Now the offense doesn't feel like they have to score on 3rd and 8. If you're Jordan Love, you feel comfortable. Hey, I can check down. I can get 3 yards. And even if we don't go on 4th and 5, I know that Brandon McManus can bail us out. He can make a kick. Now, I'm not suggesting they be more conservative. I don't think that's the move at all, but I do think it changes the complexion of the way you can call offense. And look, the Packers ultimately get in position for a shorter field goal than it needed to be. They get down to the 26-yard line. It ends up being, a 43-yard field goal. But you get the completion to Kraft on 1st and 10, where you get the offsides from the 37. So from a 37-yard line, you're talking about a 54-yard field goal. That's long. You don't want to settle there with 27 seconds left and a timeout in your pocket. You don't have to do that. But once you get to that extra 5 yards, now you're at the 32. Now it's a 49-yard field goal. And that is the 5-yard difference. Once you're inside 40, again, you're talking about a 90% hit rate on extra points and kicks inside 50. It is a luxury the Packers have not had in a long time. And I would say going back and including some of the end of the Mason Crosby era, for as clutch as he was, 2018, 2019, he hit some big kicks for sure. 2020, 2021 as well. But you didn't, from 55 with the game on the line, you were like, oh yeah, Mason, he's got this. But Brandon McManus, he has that ability. He's got that leg. And it won them this game. And if you go back to the Vikings game, if you make just one of those kicks, who knows how that game might be different. Eagles game, you miss a kick. I mean, they might legitimately be undefeated if they had signed Brandon McManus to start the season. Now, Brandon McManus was not cleared of, and still not cleared, but was still not cleared of NFL punishment in this investigation in August. So they could not have just signed him and said, whatever, we'll see. I think that would have been a PR nightmare, even if they had wanted to do it. And let's be honest, they probably did. But now they have him. They won this game. And even if this is the only meaningful kick that he has to make all season, and, God willing that it is, right? Like you hope you don't need to rely on your kicker very much. It's worth it to have a new kicker to feel confident in that moment. Now let's talk about this offense. It wasn't perfect. It was good enough. We'll talk about it to close out another Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can get going in this NFL season with big returns on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Packers do not cover 3 or 2.5, even though they won. Like, come on. They dominated this football game. They should have won by 10. This should have been 24-14. This should have been the score that Big Sarge on our crossover said, 28-14. It should have been that. But it wasn't. It wasn't. That's why they play the games. Right now at FanDuel, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. $200. You don't even have to win your bet. You just have to place it. So what are you waiting for? Go to FanDuel.com to get started. And thanks to everyone who make Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Make Locked On NFL your second listen now with 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. The first drive, Jordan Love forces the ball into the middle of the field. Jalen Petrie makes a great play to knock it away, gets a little unlucky that the ball goes into the hands of a waiting linebacker. That's a force for Jordan Love. You probably have to throw that ball to Romeo Doubs on the outside, on the outbreaking route. The second interception is just a sail. Like, he just overthrows it. But we can't talk about the second interception and not talk about the first touchdown. And that's the thing about this offense right now. You throw that interception, you come back and go 3 and out, but then you drive the ball down the field 92 yards and you throw an absolute hot piss missile to Tucker Kraft for a touchdown. A Favrean game here today from Jordan Love. Or yesterday, if you're listening to this Monday. It was that kind of day for Jordan Love. And it was that kind of day for the offense. This is certainly a game where they played well enough, especially in the first half, to be up more than they were. But Jordan Love feels the pressure, throws that interception on the first play. On the first play when they get the ball back. But then Packers defense, which is why we led with the defense. They come out, they get it, and I'm going to write about this today. The touchdown to Josh Jacobs is so cool because the whole game, they use that little shuffle motion. You motion the running back from the gun out toward the tight end and see who moves. Does the linebacker go with him? Is there a safety movement? Are they running with Josh Jacobs? Is a blitz coming? And then they just motion him right back. It's just a little tell. And then They ran that same little motion, except they didn't motion him back in. They sent Sean Ryan out, and it becomes like a little swing screen. But because they'd run that same little shuffle motion 100 times and done nothing with Josh Jacobs on any of them, he's just in there to pass protect. They haven't really done anything. And they get him free for that touchdown. That was such a cool play call. This offense for stretches of the game looked like they were just going to do whatever they wanted in the run game coming downhill. And then Matt LaFleur kind of fell in love with these outside runs. It's third and 1. And you run some sort of jet sweep, even though these trick 'em up runs hadn't worked all game. I don't think this was Matt LaFleur's best performance. I think he got a little too cute. It was one of those weird games where like the regular stuff was working and they tried to get cute, and the cute stuff was the problem, not the regular stuff. Like usually Matt LaFleur lives in that cute area where he's just like, and not just because the eyebrows are and the hair is immaculate, but because he's one of the best play designers in the league. And I understand the idea of, its backup linebackers, make them run and chase and identify and get all of this eye candy and try and make it work that way. But then it wasn't. And the linebackers were making good plays. Like I thought that Christian Watson reverse was a great call. They'd love that Jaden Reed play, get them over pursuing. And the linebackers, man, they just stayed so disciplined on the backside. At that point, I'm just like, okay, it's over. It's over. Stop trying to run those kinds of concepts. And they come down, they have a drive where they just run the ball right down the Texans' throat. They score with Josh Jacobs, and it's just sort of like, yes, that's it. That's what it's supposed to look like. But did they, in the second half, after that, you scored the touchdown coming out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 4 and out. And now all of a sudden you got to go down. But the thing is you did. And this is when you hear about the players going through something, wanting more targets. The Packers have moved on with the Romeo Doubs stuff. It was Romeo Doubs against Derek Stingley in this football game for most of the game. And that tells you something about how the Packers view Romeo Doubs and how the Texans view Romeo Doubs. 8 catches for 94 yards, had 2 key catches on that drive, like strong hand catches to create chunk plays. Just simple slants. It's just you versus me. A slant is a you versus me kind of route, because no matter the coverage, that's what it is. Can you drive on the ball and get there before me? Or can you win off the line of scrimmage in man coverage? And time after time, Romeo Doubs did. Huge play after huge play in this game. He is becoming, once again, the security blanket for Jordan Love. When they need yardage, it's Romeo Doubs. Where was Jaden Reed in this game? He had an opportunity in the first half. Big play. I don't know how in the 2-minute, when all you have to do is guard against the big plays, they get way over the top. Jordan Love throws a beautiful ball to Jaden Reed. Just couldn't survive the ground. Would have given the Packers the ball at the 25-yard line with about 35 seconds left and timeouts to spare. I think they had timeouts. And you get a couple cracks at the end zone. And worst case, you're kicking a 43-yard field goal. Same thing. Same thing. You don't give yourself an opportunity. This Packers offense is so talented. It's so good. They can't beat themselves. And the Jordan Love stuff, what's so strange about this is Jordan Love was a top 10 quarterback last year on the good end in terms of turnover-worthy plays. He was a good quarterback avoiding turnovers. He had that stretch, the 3 interceptions against Las Vegas, the 2 against the Lions, one of those not his fault. That was basically it. Second half of the season, he didn't turn the ball over at all. To start the season, he's been a little over-aggressive and then just missing some throws. Also getting a little bit unlucky. Like, remember the Vikings one that goes through the hands of 2 Packers players. Like, come on. And how many times did the ball that gets tipped but not intercepted. Like Jalen Petrie would have made an incredible interception coming all the way off his coverage on Romeo Doubs to make that play. How often does that go right to a defender? Or how often does it go right to a defender and that guy drops it? Right? So there's been some luck problems here too. But again, if he can just modulate that back a little bit, and this is something we were saying at the beginning of last year, you can just modulate that risk-taking back a little bit. I mean, you see the good. You see the good. He's still 24 of 33 with 3 touchdowns in this game, still at a rating over 95, even with 2 interceptions, because the good plays are so good. That throw to Doubs, it should have been DPI, rolling to his right, dropping it over the shoulder. I mean, that was even Tony Romo was like, oh my God, that was an incredible throw. Just ease up off some of the aggressive. I know he's aggressive. You got to ride that line. There's a little bit of Josh Allen in him right now. And I understand Packers fans. There's a lot of Jordan Favre being mentioned right now. Guess what? This is the kind of game that Brett Favre wins. Throws a couple picks, doesn't let it bother him, come back, throws a couple touchdown passes, and then goes and wins the game. And that's who Brett Favre was. And when you have a defense like this, playmakers like this, and a coach like this, don't ask about the special teams. You can win a Super Bowl. This team is capable. This team is so capable. We haven't even seen them play their best yet. They're 5-2 and haven't played their best football. This is a stretch now. Next couple of weeks that can define their season. Jaguars, Lions, Bears, Niners, Dolphins, Lions, Seahawks, Saints, Vikings, Bears to close. You needed to bank these wins now. You did. Go beat this dog Jaguars team. They're going to come back from London feeling great. And then you got to beat your divisional guys. You got to beat your divisional opponents. And you have a chance. Everything you want. What is the great Monty Williams quote? Even though he's not a great coach. Everything you want is on the other side of hard. Everything they want is on the other side of this stretch right here for the Packers. If they can get this offense humming a little bit, eliminate the negative plays, this can be, and I said it before the season, some of you maybe didn't believe me. I know a lot of you did. This can be the best team in the NFC. This can be the best team in the NFL. I don't know how many teams are capable of putting together the defensive performance that the Packers were on Sunday. Period. And then to have a coach, a quarterback, and offensive skill talent the way the Packers do. I just don't see many teams out there, if at all. All right, we're going to be back tomorrow. So much more on Locked On Packers. Tony Wiggins, hell yeah. He joins the show next week on our crossover Thursday. We are live on YouTube. If you are not subscribed on YouTube, what are you waiting for? We're going to be live after every game. We're live right now with 1,400 people having a great time talking about Brandon McManus and Jordan Love and Jeff Hafley, my guy. Let's do this. The Green Bay Packers, 5-2, and feeling really good right now about where this team is, because there's so much more that they can get to. There's so much more that they can get to, especially offensively. The ceiling for this team is through the roof. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, we will be live on our YouTube page after all of these games. After all of these games, we'll be live through the playoffs, through January, maybe into February. I'm starting to think about booking New Orleans. I've been to this last, 3-4 Super Bowls. So I'm going to go anyway. Are the Packers coming? Are we going to see them there? We might. And if we do, come say hi, because I'll be there. So you can stay Locked On Packers.